Well, I think that the issue about presidential pardon generally is one that I find controversial. I have never really accepted that aspect of our Constitution. I think that presidents should have no business pardoning people. When people are jailed or convicted in accordance with the judicial process, that should terminate it. And I do not think that presidents sitting in a political position should ordinarily be given that power. Historically, the reason kings and queens of England pardoned people were because the courts were the kings and queens' courts. And so they have essentially delegated their judicial authority to the courts. And so they could have the final say. And on ceremonial occasions, out of goodwill, they pardon people. Our Constitution has sort of adopted that, in my opinion, without much historical context, unfortunately. We've been doing this over the years, and that's part of the problem we have. So you have a president sitting ex cathedra who may not have much knowledge about the factual circumstances and even the whole trial process, deciding that out of goodwill I'm pardoning one person or the other. That is what leads to controversy if the president does not steep himself in adequate consultation and support. And that is why the Constitution says that the president shall consult. But we have seen this time and again when presidents have pardoned people who ordinarily ought not to be pardoned, so to speak. And then the contest and the controversy and the criticisms will come. I think we have a few examples in history. The current one, I would say that perhaps, but for one or two names that appears in there, or that appear in there, maybe this would have passed without people even knowing about it. Yeah. But those one or two names then implicate broader problems with the whole pardoning process. I'll tell you this. In the prisons, we have people who are on remand and who have been on remand for more than 5 years. In the past, I've witnessed more than 10 years in respect of cases in which, had they even gone through the trial and been convicted, the penalty for the offense will not be up to the period they have already spent on remand. We have people in prison who clearly have been convicted improperly, and evidence has shown, subsequent evidence has shown, that they ought not be in prison. They are still in prison. We have people in prison who, as a result of ill health or other circumstances, as a result of other circumstances, as it were, they deserve consideration for pardon. We have people in prison who, by reason of a number of other extenuating factors, deserve pardon who ordinarily are not considered. The question is, what is the empirical basis? What is the research basis? Who has done some work to itemize those out of the political consideration, out of other, connected persons consideration, people who are connected to power, making these references? How do we insulate the pardon process from preferences that are unjustifiable, so to speak?
And on this list, there are few that reasons were not assigned for why they were in consideration for pardon. Akwesi Alhassan, number one, says he was convicted of murder and sentenced to death on the 19th of March, 1993. He has been in prison since then. That's 31 years. He's now serving life imprisonment per presidential order. That's the end of it. It doesn't say why he's being considered for pardon, whether he's had a transformative life or something. Beatrice Ofori, she was convicted of human trafficking on the 6th of June 2023, like recently, for 8 years with hard labor. She is currently 64 years, so that may be the consideration. Old and is seriously hypertensive. So the reason is given. This has affected both legs, leading to her inability to move freely. She spends most of her time in the prison infirmary. Then William Atuesian comes in. He was convicted for his role in the collapse of Capital Bank and sentenced to pay 90 million Ghana cedis. He defaulted after paying part of the money. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison in December 2023. He is suffering from severe life-threatening medical conditions and has undergone multiple surgeries as a result. Franco Bing, we are not told why he is being, sought to be pardoned after he was sentenced for manslaughter. There's Stephen Nyako. We are not told why he is also being pardoned. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison in 2010. He's done 22 years. Philip Asibit, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison in 2018 for willfully causing financial loss to the state related to his role at the National Youth Employment Program. He has served 6 years in prison. He has pleaded to be released on the grounds of ill health. So that's how it goes.
Right. But I will argue that you have 10 times more the number of people on this list who reflect the same indices. The question is, why are they still in there? So it's important to broaden this. It's important to objectify it and take it out of the remit of the politicized environment in which usually it's been administered. And I will argue that the difficulty with this is that even though you've had explanation for someone, for example, like Atuesian, it's a difficult conversation for some people. And the reason is because the banking crisis, so to speak, is still ongoing.
That's right.
In fact, President Muhammad's speech, reflected that's one area there will probably have to be some forensic investigation moving forward. Either his speech, or I think I saw it somewhere, among some of the things that he would do in the first couple of days or months or weeks in office.
120 days.
Right, 120 days in office. So that tells you that we have a situation that is still ongoing, and then we have culprits who are in the process of being pardoned. For some people, that was difficult to swallow. So I think that some of these things, you look at broader issues. I can understand the humanitarian consideration issues, such as the fact that, look, he's undergone medical conditions and medical treatments, and he's suffering from debilitating medical condition. These are humanitarian considerations, and they actually justify pardon. But the point I'm making is it's important to look at this broadly, holistically, more non-politically, and out of the whole political environment and the pressure that attends to this, because it undermines the effect of it. Even though I will go back to how I started, I generally am against pardons because they make no sense to the judicial process. If people are guilty, they serve the penalty. If they are not guilty and they are innocent, they shouldn't be there in the first place. I think it's important that we rather get the judicial process right instead of the political pardon that usually comes post-conviction. Okay,
so this letter that communicated this from the Office of the President, dated the 31st of December 2024, was to the chairperson of the Council of State and was copied to the Vice President and also copied to the Chief of Staff. And then the Communications Director of the Office of the President issued a statement on the 6th of January 2025, saying that the attention of the Office of the President has been drawn to reports circulating in sections of the media suggesting that the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has granted a presidential pardon to certain individuals. And he says, we wish to categorically state that these assertions are inaccurate and no pardon has been granted by President Akufo-Addo. The public is kindly urged to disregard any contrary information and rely on official communications from the Office of the President.